Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namni Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarni Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandrodaya ki jai. Shri Shri Nitai Gauranga ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaura Prabhupada. So welcome everyone for the Sunday morning Science of Self-Realization session. We are discussing on this book, which is a compilation of the various teachings of Srila Prabhupada in the form of letter exchanges between prominent people across the globe and wonderful conversations Prabhupada had with scientists, doctors, philosophers, poets, and also Prabhupada's own essays which he had written for his Back to Godhead magazine before he started the ISKCON movement. So we have been discussing on one topic known as life comes from life since last two sessions. We'll continue our discussion. So this discussion on life comes from life is basically a conversation which Prabhupada had. Which Prabhupada had with his disciples. Which Prabhupada had with his disciples. And in America, US, during 1972, during a morning walk. So we are continuing our discussion with regard to the various arguments which scientists put forward, that life is coming from matter, whereas it is very evident and obvious from the teachings of Vedic literatures, as Prabhupada is presenting to us, that life is not coming from matter, rather matter comes from life. Right, today we have some more interesting topics to discuss on this point. Okay. So today we'll touch upon one important aspect in this discussion, is that Krishna is the original seed-giving father. How the origin of all the life, what you see, it is from Lord Krishna. This is what Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. This presentation is an inspiration from our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, who has compiled and written many Vedic literatures for us, for our benefit in the very simple language in English. So as I told you, this is a morning walk conversation which happened in April 1973 at Los Angeles. And this is recorded. There were a series of conversations which is recorded for say maybe 10 to 12 days. Prabhupada was in Los Angeles during that time. And very wonderful talks happened. And the discussions what we are having is portions of those conversations. So I've been discussing in the previous session, just to continue our the link from the previous session, that the scientists are ignorant of the origin. Just like scientists discover some obviously present some law or some phenomena going on in the material world, but they'll not ask the next question, where from it is coming, how it is originating, right? So scientists in that way are ignorant of the origin. Modern day scientists, Prabhupada says, have started from an intermediate point, not from the original point, right? They've been just observing the various things happening in the material nature and assuming that they are happening automatically. That is the defect in the modern day scientific understanding. So in that way, they are ignorant of the origin of this whole material world and the different things happening in the material world. The scientists start from one point, but where does that point come from? Is the argument which Prabhupada is presenting. Right? You start with the law of gravitation, for example. But who made this law called law of gravitation? Why this law of gravitation is existing? These are the questions which scientists have to answer. They do not know this aspect in spite of vast research. Right? They're researching many things. But even now, they're not able to find out the starting point or the original point. One has to accept that the original source is God, who is full of all mystic powers and from whom everything emanates. So this is the definition of God, that He is the origin of everything. He is the source of everything. Everything emanates from Him. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. In the 10th chapter, it is mentioned, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattha sarvam pravartate. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. It is a very wonderful statement Krishna makes to make it very clear to us what is the source of this whole material creation or the spiritual creation or whatever we see around us. What is the source? Something must be the cause. Very scientifically, it is presented here with very many examples by Srila Prabhupada. How to accept this point that Krishna is the source of everything. The statement which Krishna makes in Bhagavad Gita is a factual statement because He is that personality from whom everything is emanating. The Vedanta Sutra also confirms this by telling, Janmadyasya yataha, that personality from whom everything in this material creation is manifested, it is maintained, and again, when the annihilation happens, when the complete destruction happens, everything goes back to this personality. He is our supreme person, Lord Krishna. Right? Like this, we have ample evidences from Vedic scriptures and the various other great teachers. Vedic teachers have given us the confirmation on Krishna's supremacy and He is being the source of everything. Our conclusions are based on our blind faith, right? Whereas we accept these Vedic conclusions, they are most scientific because we only tend to think based on our understanding. The statement in the Sanskrit, it is called Atmavat Manyate Jagat. We want to judge everything based on our limited understanding, limited perspective. Just like in the previous session, we discussed on a nice example Prabhupada gave about Dr. Frog. One Dr. Frog, he happened to somehow jump into the well wherein one more frog was living. Dr. Frog coming from ocean, Pacific, say. Dr. Frog, who is staying in the well, happened to meet one more frog who jumped into the well from the ocean, on the bank of the oceans he was staying, shore of the ocean. So the conversation began. Dr. Frog in the well is trying to understand what is ocean. When Dr. Frog asked, what is the size of the ocean? Because he has never heard of ocean. When the frog from the ocean said, it is many times bigger. So Dr. Frog wanted to assess the size and the width and the depth and everything. Maybe it is 2 times, 3 times. Like this, he started giving his assessment. So scientists would like to assess the things, what they see around them, with their limited understanding, with their limited material perspective. This is the defect. Right? So Prabhupada says here that our conclusions are not based on blind faith. Whatever we are telling from Vedic scriptures, they're all scientific. As we understood in our previous session, that any human being has 4 defects. He is sure to commit mistakes. His senses are imperfect. He is under illusion, and he has a cheating propensity. With these imperfections, we cannot have a perfect understanding of things, what we see around us with our limited perception. So matter actually comes from life. In life, in the origin, there are unlimited material resources. That is a great mystery of creation. So the original source of everything, everything is emanating from that. The image you are seeing next to this write-up is the image of Mahavishnu, from whose breathing innumerable universes are emanating. Once he exhales, a lot of universes are coming out. You can see, you cannot count them. Ananta Brahmandas. And when he inhales, all his Brahmandas again go back to his body, and everything becomes completely finished. Again, creation happens, again annihilation happens. This is the cosmic time scale at which creation and annihilation is happening. Now, Prabhupada is going to explain to us what is known as the modern way of approach of the material understanding of the material world around us, how the modern scientists or the modern philosophers approach. This is known as metaphysics in the Western countries, also known as Sankhya philosophy from the Vedic perspective. So what is this Sankhya philosophy? The modern scientific research is analyzing material elements. So it is like Sankhya philosophy only. Anything which is analyzed to its details, to its, as much as possible to the unit, denomination, that is called Sankhya philosophy. So the modern scientific research is just like Sankhya philosophy only, which is analyzing material elements to its last denomination. Sankhya basically means to count how this whole material world is made up of. What are the basic building blocks, the building elements, the units for making this whole world? This is called Sankhya. So Prabhupada says we are also Sankhya philosophers to some extent, but we count and analyze, because we also count and analyze the material elements. We get a lot of wonderful analysis given in the Bhagavad Gita as well as Bhagavata. It's like we say, this is land, this is water, this is air, this is sunshine, this is fire. The Pancha Dhatu, we say. Bhumir, Apo, Nalo, Vayu. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So furthermore, I go beyond these gross elements to subtle elements. I count my mind, my intelligence, and my ego. Right? Beyond ego, there is also a very subtle existence of the spirit soul, which I cannot count, or rather I don't know, because of which I don't count. Right? So Lord Krishna says that there is existence beyond the ego, and that existence is the living force, the spirit soul. Right? So we are discussing on the aspect of how the scientists are lacking the understanding of what is the origin of this whole universe, what is the origin of all the existence around us. They just start from an intermediate point, and they're not going to the actual origin of everything. Right? And now, when you come to the point of analyzing things, even science goes on to the aspect of rigorous analysis of any aspect. So we have, if you have analyzed, why are you not finding about the soul? This is the aspect we're discussing now. In Bhagavad Gita, we get a very clear understanding that actually the source of everything is the Supreme Lord. And even we as living entities, as spirit souls, who is above all this material existence, actually, we also are originating from Krishna. This is the understanding we get from Bhagavad Gita. So this is what the scientists do not know, that beyond this material body, beyond this, even the subtle element called ego, there is the existence of the living force, the spirit soul. So the scientists think that the life is merely a combination of material elements. Right? Mostly scientists think there is some life symptoms which are come about by combination of the material elements in a particular pattern. But it is not the fact. The life symptoms is because of the presence of the spirit soul and the super soul accompanying the spirit soul. In the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, Krishna mentions, Apareyam itastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param. This means, besides this inferior nature, there is a superior nature of, superior energy of mind, Krishna says. This inferior nature means the material world, what we are seeing around us, the various manifestations, mountains, oceans, the plants, trees, all these things, what you see around us, is all actually part of inferior nature. Inferior, why? Because it is matter in a particular permutation combination. Say, for example, you build a big skyscraper building. Skyscraper building, what is it actually? It is a permutation combination of basic matter ingredients of earth, water, fire. Right? They are combined in a particular way. The sand is available as the earth. The soil is again mixed in a particular fashion and heated, becomes brick. Then there is cement, again a combination of many elements, material elements. So like this, the building what we see, our skyscraper building is only a permutation combination of different material elements lying around. Right? It is manipulated and made in that form by the spirit soul, the living entity. So this is what Prabhupada wants to explain, that the inferior nature itself has no power to create or do anything, any manifestation. Whereas it is a living entity, the spirit soul, and the supreme living entity, Lord Krishna, who has the power to move this material world. Right? So Krishna is very clearly telling that there is superior energy in all of us, that is the living entity, the spirit soul. And this body itself is made up of inferior nature. The inferior nature is the material elements, and the superior energy is the living entity. This is the important knowledge which Krishna is giving in the Bhagavad Gita, that the inferior nature is material elements, that is dumb, it has no movement, it has no life symptoms, whereas superior energy is the living entity. It's actually moving the elements or whatever ingredients which it has got by the arrangement of providence. So very nicely Krishna explains further in the 7th chapter. Bhumirapo nalo vayu kam mano buddhirevacha ahankara mitiyam me bhinna prakritir ashtadha. The earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. All these 8 elements comprise my separated material energies, Krishna says. So they are material energies. Material means, matter means it is having no life symptoms. It is, jada vastu. In Sanskrit, it is called jada. Jada means it has no life symptoms, right? Whereas we living entities are active. In fact, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita in the very beginning that nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtit akarmakrit. There is not even a moment that the spirit soul is inactive. Always it is active. So let us try to understand these 24 elements. What are they? In Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter. The 24 elements, the first 5 elements are the gross elements, the Panchabhuta, the earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? And further, there are 5 knowledge acquiring senses in every living entity. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the touch, which means through these senses, you get the information, what is happening around you, and it is passed on into your mind-body system. And there are 5 working senses, the voice, the legs, the hands, evacuating organs, and reproductive organs. They are known as working senses. And besides these, there are 4 more elements which are called subtle elements: the mind, intelligence, false ego, and the pradhana. So pradhana basically means the total material elements in its unmanifested form. And there are 5 more objects of senses, right? They are known as the form. For example, for the eyes, form is the object of sense. The sound is for the ears, smell is for the nose, taste is for the tongue, and touch is for the skin. Right? Like this, there are 5 objects of senses. Altogether, these combined, they become 24 material elements. The metaphysics or the modern scientific approach is that they just know these 24 elements. And beyond this 24, there is soul. And beyond soul, there is super soul. This is what the Bhagavata Sankhya philosophy explains to us. In the Bhagavata, in the third canto, Lord Kapila, who is incarnation of Lord Krishna, explains all this to his mother, Devahuti. So the interaction of these 24 elements in the form of pleasure, pain, desire, hatred is all experienced by the spirit soul. That is the point. So these are the 24 elements which is described in the scriptures in a very detailed manner. So here we can see that Lord Krishna is explaining in the Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter that Vayu or the air or the gas comes from him, and finer than the air is Kham or the ether, the sky. And further Krishna says, finer than ether is the mind, more subtler it is becoming. And finer than mind is intelligence. And finer than intelligence is the soul. All this is explained in Bhagavad Gita very nicely, detailed manner. So there are, in the material world, there are grosser to subtler, subtler, subtler. And the finest aspect is the soul. So, but the scientists actually do not know that there is subtler aspects existing in this material world. They can perceive only gross things. So when you say air, Vayu, where does the Vayu come from? Right? Where does this gas come from? We have knowledge that gas comes from ether. And ether comes from mind. Mind comes from intelligence. Intelligence comes from Krishna's superior energy, the spirit soul. So we know the ultimate cause from where everything is emanating, right? So the question is, are both inferior and superior energies studied in Sankhya philosophy? Just now we discussed. The inferior energy is the material energy, and the superior energy is the spirit soul. The Sankhya philosophy or the modern scientific approach of metaphysics, do they study both of them? The answer Prabhupada says is no. Sankhya philosophers or the modern scientists, the metaphysics study the people, they do not know of superior energy. They simply analyze material elements, just as scientists do. Neither the scientists nor the Sankhya philosophers know anything of the spirit soul. This is the defect in the modern scientific approach, the metaphysical approach. They are simply analyzing Krishna's material energy. They are not going beyond that these material elements, where from they are coming, who has originated, who is the origin of all these things, right? They're simply analyzing what is right in front of them. This is the defect. So the real research, what we have to see or understand is how Krishna is the origin of everything. It is mentioned Sarva Karana Karanam. So we'll try to understand now with a proper analysis how Krishna gives the first push. He is the origin of everything, and he is the person who is activating the whole material world. Actually speaking, the material elements themselves are dull. They are dull matter. They don't have creative energy, whereas the spirit soul is creative. So we are again coming to the point of our discussion that no one can create life with only matter. Matter cannot create itself, right? Very nice examples Prabhupada gives. So basically you're trying to understand that matter has no creative energy. A very nice example Prabhupada gives in one of the contexts. He says, just like in a watch factory, there are so many watches being manufactured in a very systematic manner. There's a conveyor which is, making some items of that, watch being assembled slowly, step by step by step by step, right? So in the watch factory, everything is being monitored and completely supervised by the different technicians, the supervisors standing there, every step, so that there is no defect, because every watch is going to be used by individual person. So they don't want to see that it is defective. So whereas this watch itself, which is being so nicely monitored to be manufactured as individual units under the supervision of different humans. Once the watch is manufactured, it is not that the watch can create more watches. Not possible, right? So the watch can be only manufactured as individual units by assembling different parts of the watch under the supervision of different human beings. So we have to come to this understanding that the material elements have no power to create. Matter cannot create. Whereas the matter is created by living entities. Life gives rise to matter. Life comes from life. This is the point we are discussing. Just like very nicely, one example Prabhupada gives is that a living entity, can mix hydrogen and oxygen to create water. It is what we know, H2O. But matter itself has no creative energy. If you place a bottle of hydrogen near a bottle of oxygen, then will they automatically combine without your help? They will remain like that forever. Right? Somebody has to mix them. Somebody has to move them together. Only then that reaction happens. That is the point. So superior energy, the living entity, is required to move them or mix them. Oxygen and hydrogen are inferior energy. But when the superior energy mixes them, then they become water. Now, with this example, you can understand. We have vast bodies of water, like ocean, seas, rivers, right? So these water bodies, which we are seeing, how it is that it is formed. Somebody would have mixed, just like in the laboratory, you mix hydrogen, oxygen, you get water. So there must be a supreme entity who has mixed, in universal proportions, hydrogen and oxygen, and made the element called water. Right? This comes to this makes us to understand how gigantic is the universal manifestation. What great arrangements Lord has made. So things are all not simply happening automatically or without anybody's intervention. Rather, Lord is under complete control. This is the point we have to understand. Okay. So inferior energy, the matter has no power unless superior energy is involved. Now, matter cannot move anything. The superior energy, living entities' involvement is required. Only then matter can be moved. Prabhupada gives one more example, because he was moving on the shore of Pacific Ocean. So he gave an example that this Pacific Ocean is calm and quiet. But when the superior force called air pushes it, there are high waves and tides created. The sea itself has no power without the superior force. This is the point. So when you see many, many wonderful phenomena happening in the material world, we need to understand that these phenomena is not happening simply on its own. There's a nice statement by Krishna in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, wherein the people who are not aware of how the material phenomena is working, they think everything is happening automatically. Asatyam apatishtamte jagad aranishwaram. They say there is no God in existence. It's all, there's no foundation, there's no truth. Everything is happening on its own. How everything can happen on its own? Nothing will happen on its own. There should be somebody who is controlling, who is directing everything in the material world. This is the very scientific and a logical conclusion which we can come to. If you say everything is happening automatically, just like a child may think, oh, aeroplane is flying automatically. But we as adults know that the flight or the aeroplane cannot fly automatically. There's a big science behind making of that big machine called aeroplane. And there's a pilot who is sitting and operating the machine. Right? Unless the pilot starts, just like many of us would have traveled in the flight. You sit in the flight, but if the flight has to move, the pilot has to operate the flight. Right? Otherwise, flight will not move. That is the point. So anything is what is happening in the material manifestation. Just like we move and we manipulate things in a universal scale, Supreme Lord is acting in a very, very subtle manner, in a very, very automatic manner. It's called Jnana Bala Kriya, Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriya, it is called. Okay. Similarly, there is another force superior to the air, another and another, until we arrive at Krishna, the most superior force. This is called real research. So we began our discussion with telling that scientists are unaware or ignorant of the origin of life origin of everything in the material world. Whereas in the Bhagavad Gita, very clear understanding is given. Krishna himself declares that he is the origin of everything what is happening in the material world. Now, we living entities are also originating from him, and he is the supreme personality of Godhead. This is called real research, which means our research has to end with understanding that Krishna is the source of everything. Krishna is the origin of everything. A very nice example is given by Prabhupada again. Suppose a railroad train is just starting to move. The engine is pushing one car, which pushes another, and so on, until the entire train is moving. And the whole motion originates with the engineer, a living entity. Right? If you say bogie number 8, how it is moving? It is moving because bogie 7 is pulling. Bogie 7 is moving. Why? Because bogie 6 is pulling. Like this, you come to the point of engine, which is pulling all the bogies. Now, how is the engine moving? The engine is moving because the engineer or the operator is sitting and pushing the buttons. He is operating it. That's why it is moving. It's finally the living entity who is moving this big train. Not that the engine is moving. It appears that the engine is moving. Right? Similarly, in the cosmic manifestation, Krishna gives the first push, and then by means of many successive pushes, the entire cosmic manifestation comes into being. These are all explained very nicely in the Bhagavata in a detailed manner. How when there was total material substance called Pradhana, then Krishna glanced over this material nature, and just by his glancing, the material nature starts getting agitated, and the different manifestations, one after other, starts coming out. Right? So it is basically Krishna's touch that is making this whole material manifestation come into existence in different varieties and forms. That is the point. So the first push is from Krishna, and the material nature is so wonderfully arranged, organized, that everything looks like we're all moving automatically. Things are happening automatically. But basically, the Krishna, Supreme Lord, he is controlling and managing the whole show in a very wonderful manner. Things it is beyond our thinking power. It's called achintya. Achintya means things which are inconceivable or beyond our imagination. So in the cosmic creation, Krishna gives the first push, and by many successive pushes, the entire cosmic manifestation comes into being. We also understood in the previous session that Lord Krishna has one special name known as Adhokshaya, which means he's beyond our sensual perception. He's beyond our limited sensual understanding. Right? He's called Adhokshaya. So Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains this aspect, how Krishna is giving an initial push or the first push. He says, Maya Dhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam. This means this material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and is producing all moving and non-moving beings. It's a very wonderful statement in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is confirming that he is a supreme director, a supreme will, and everything is directly, indirectly controlled by him in many, many different wonderful ways. So, Krishna in the further chapters, he says, later chapter, that he is the seed-giving father. Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantiyaha tasham brahma mahad yonir aham bija pradapita. He says, all species of life are made possible by birth in the material nature, and I am the seed-giving father. It's like when we come to the point of questioning or trying to get an answer to the question, actually, where from I come? Where do I belong to actually? What is my origin? Here is the question. Here is the answer. Actually, I belong to Krishna. My origin is from Krishna. Krishna says, I am the seed-giving father. Because in the later chapters, we also see Krishna saying, Mamaivam sho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Eternally, I am part and parcel of Krishna. Eternally, I am belonging to Krishna. I am actually eternally connected to Krishna very intimately. This is my relationship. Right? This is the actual understanding of our origin, where from we have come. For example, if we sow a banyan seed, a huge tree eventually grows up and produces millions of new seeds. And each of these seeds, in turn, produces another tree with millions of new seeds and so on. This is the way Krishna is arranged in the material world. How one seed can again produce one more big tree, and from there millions of new seeds are created. Again, it can become the source of many, many more trees. Whereas the example of watch which I gave you, watch has to be manufactured under proper strict supervision by many humans. But watch itself cannot give birth to many other watches. That is the limitation with regard to matter we have. Whereas when the living entity is present in the in the form of a seed, in the banyan tree, that can give birth to many, many flowers and fruits and further its seeds for further more increase of the banyan trees. So Krishna is the original seed giving father. This is the title of today's presentation, that he is the original seed giving father from whom everything has emanated. When he say Krishna is the original seed giving father, you have to understand living entities starting from microbes up to Brahma, Krishna is the source. So the living entities in different bodies are basically the different dresses they are wearing. And just like I am wearing one type of a dress today, tomorrow I may wear a different dress. Likewise, the living entities having a micro form, that is one dress, or elephant form, one dress, or a human form is one dress, demigod or the devatas is one dress. Like this, up to Brahma Loka, Brahma, the living entities have different types of dresses. There are 84 lakh different types of dresses which a living entity can take and go on rotating this whole material world in different universes. Right? We have to take a conscious decision that we have been rotating or we have been moving around, transmigrating from one body to another. Dehantara prapti. We have to come out of this dehantara prapti. The transmigration of the soul from different bodies has to be stopped in this human form. That is the purpose of human form of life. And how to do this is what Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, that we can do this only by performance of devotional service to Krishna. Right? We'll move forward. So Krishna is the original seed giving father. This is very obvious and very evident from our understanding here. Unfortunately, the scientists only observe the immediate cause. They are not perceiving the remote cause. Here we come to a very interesting discussion on what is known as immediate cause and remote cause. Just we are seeing right now some things are happening, and we assume that this is the reason. But behind that, there's so many other factors working, so many other aspects working. What is that? How is that? We'll try to understand a little more. So there are two causes for anything what you see. Right? We are doing a cause-effect analysis now. Just like the example of train we took. One bogie, the one compartment is moving because one more in the front is moving it or pushing it or pulling it. Sorry. I only come to the point of the engine, which is actually pulling all the different compartments. And the engine itself is moving because there is an operator, the living entity, spirit soul, who is operating that whole big machine. So there are two causes which we can see. One is the immediate cause, and the another one is the remote cause. So Krishna is described in the Vedas as the ultimate cause of all causes. Sarva karana karanam. If you go on analyzing, just like the example of train also, if you take now, engine, yes, it is moving because it is having horsepower and everything, but it can only be moved or operated when there is a touch, spiritual touch from the human being, the engineer. And how is this engineer working? Next question. Engineer is not working on his own. There is an arrangement. Bhagavad Gita says that there is a super soul within this body. Super soul is giving directions to the material nature and makes this body function in a particular manner. This is the final understanding we get from Bhagavad Gita. So basically, the super soul is activating through his presence for the living entity in this particular body to function. That is the whole point. So finally, it is Krishna who is doing everything. The living entity desires and Lord Krishna fulfills them. Man proposes, God disposes. But we have to have clear understanding that Krishna is the cause of all causes. Final cause, or the final reason why things are happening is because of Krishna's will or his plans. So when you understand that Lord Krishna is the source of all the different things, and he's the cause of all causes, then you understand everything. There's a nice Vedic statement which says, Kasminnu bhagavato vijnate sarvam idam vijnatam bhavati. If you know the original cause, the latter subordinate causes are automatically known. Right? It is like this. Say near your house, there is one. There's maybe some machinery shop where you want to go and purchase one machine. But if you come to know this machine is much cheaper from the place of its manufacture, what you will do? You will definitely try to approach that manufacturer wherever he is and try to get a similar machine from there, which is going to be much cheaper compared to you're purchasing from a retailer near your place in a shop. The retailer will have his own overheads. There will be transportation costs and so many aspects like this. So the origin of everything is Krishna, Sarva Karana Karanam, and he is the original cause, and everything else is subordinate to him. We come to the conclusion with this slide, the last slide of today's session. All of the scientists are searching after the original cause. Now, when the Vedas, which contain perfect knowledge, give the original cause, they won't accept. They keep to their partial, imperfect knowledge. So very obviously, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is mentioning very clearly, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Gyanvan Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti. This is a nice statement in Bhagavad Gita which says that the living entities are actually were wandering all around. When they come to the platform of understanding knowledge, that Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes is Krishna. Such a soul is very rare and is very fortunate. Because all of us are looking forward or searching for knowledge, the reason for various things around us, the cause of this, cause of that. We are researching actually. But when you come to the conclusion that Krishna is everything, which is actually a fact, then after what happens? Lord Krishna says, after that you surrender to Krishna. You start performing devotion to Krishna. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante ma. Krishna says, when you know that I am the source of everything, naturally the next step will be you start worshipping Lord Krishna in that way. Then when you start worshipping Krishna in that way, what happens? Then you have become you become the most intelligent person. Buddha bhava samanvita. Otherwise, your search will be going on like this life after life, because we are always seeking for happiness, seeking for knowledge, seeking for permanency, which is not possible in the material world. When you take shelter of Krishna, when you understand Krishna properly, your research stops. Your real research has happened. That is the point. So scientists may go on researching, but already the Vedas have researched and given us the understanding who is the cause of all causes, who is the origin of everything. Krishna is the seed-giving father. Krishna is the cause of all causes. He is Sarva Karana Karanam. And understanding this, our next symptom will be to perform devotion to Krishna, which is going to perfect our human life. So with this, I conclude today's session and open the platform for any questions, any clarifications, any doubts. Any questions? Okay, fine. So if you have no questions, then we will close the session for today. Thank you everybody for being part of the session today. We'll continue our discussion on the same subject in next week also and try to conclude by next session. Thank you everybody. Hare Krishna. Jai Sri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.